Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the Shimmerz July Color Kitz collection. So I'm going to warn you right from the start, I wasn't sure if I was actually going to post this video because it's not as clear as I would like it to be. There is a part in the video that is clear, but the first section and the last section are the way that this footage is right now, not super clear. But I thought that it was still clear enough for me to show you how to create this really simple and I think kind of cool background. So I decided to just go ahead and post this, and if you are thinking this is a little too blurry for you, I totally understand. I'm going to have another one where I show you a similar technique, and that video will be out soon. You can watch that one, but I still thought that it was worth, as I said, posting this one. So I'm creating a background in which I'm using some of my Shimmerz sprays. I'm using a piece of gessoed white cardstock, and I'm using two different colors. I use the Coloringz Orange You Glad and the Spritz Caribbean Sunset to create this background. So I'm going to have my photo in the center. You could see there's that white space in the middle. And I put some color all around as kind of a base. Now I'm going back with my spray, and I'm using this, I think it's called an aspirator. I'm not really sure what Ranger calls it. This is the Ranger one that's meant for spreading, I believe, alcohol inks, but you can spread any kind of paint that is thin enough to be spread with this and get some cool effects. So you can see that I'm going around the circle. I'm adding a little bit more of the color, so I'll have some wet color to work with. I'm not adding any water. I want the color to be very intense, and I have no problem with using this aspirator to create the tendrils with the spray as it is. So I think it takes a little bit of time to get the hang of this, but when I say a little bit of time, it just takes one layout, I would say. You can spray forward. If you think that there's a little bit too much paint, you could spray the paint back again into the center. If you want to add some smaller lines, sometimes there'll be a little bit of extra paint in the larger ones, and you can try spraying the larger lines and it'll spread out and make some smaller lines. And you can also go back and rework any areas you don't like. You could add a little bit of extra paint and then continue spraying, and it will help to mask any lines or change the lines that you've made that you don't like. I think that this is the kind of technique that you really have to kind of just try out yourself. And I think, like I said, that you'll kind of pick up on it very quickly and see what this aspirator can do. So I go back to most of the spots more than once. If I liked the way an area looked, I left it alone. But if I wanted a little bit of a different look, I went back in and I used my tool and I added a few more lines. My idea was to create this kind of explosion effect. And like I said, a lot of it gets covered up, but I wanted there to be a really large area with this effect. But you don't have to make such a large area. You can have small little areas like this, perhaps in different colors all over your layout. There's so many possibilities. I've used this technique before, but I haven't used it in so long, and I forgot how much I really enjoy using it, and it worked really well with the Shimmerz sprays. So I had a lot of paint on my layout, so I used my heat tool and I dried it. And now I'm adding some splatters. And this is the clear part of the video. It doesn't last that long, but this is the clear part. I added splatters in both colors, the Orange You Glad and the Caribbean Sunset. As I was looking at the background, I was thinking that there was one area that I wasn't really too fond of, and it doesn't end up being visible in the final layout, but I didn't know that at the time. So I decided to go back in and add a little bit more paint and spread the color around a little bit more. The July kit has a lot of really bright colors and flowers and fruit, and this layout is going to mainly be about fruit slices. So you'll see those pieces in a moment, but I thought that this beautiful color that's in the background, or a combination of colors, would offset the pieces I'm going to layer over it nicely. So I added some watered down white acrylic paint splatters. So before I added the acrylic paint to the background, I ran my background through my laminating machine a few times. Not laminating it, just using the laminating machine to flatten it out. That's a little tip that I learned from a Paige Evans video a long time ago. If you run it through with acrylic paint and it's not 100% dry, then the paint will stick to the laminating folder, and I don't want that to happen. So I flattened it out before adding the acrylic paint. So now, unfortunately, we're back to slightly blurry again. These are the two photos that I'm going to be using. And you'll see in the final layout that I ended up switching the yellow mat for another green mat. And the reason I did that is because there's so much color on this layout and there's so many different elements that are different colors. I thought that it would read a little more clearly if both of the photos had the same color mat. But I do that off camera, so you won't see that until the final picture. So I already have a lot of that background covered up with my two photos, and now I'm going to add a ton of fussy cut fruit pieces into this background. So you'll see in a little while that you could just see a couple of little lines sticking out from behind the embellishments, but I personally like it. I know sometimes some people get upset when the mixed media background gets covered up, but for me, I feel like it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that that's just the part of the background that you wanted to have showing. So now I'm adding these fruit slices to the background. There was a piece of pattern paper that was just covered in all of these limes and lemons and oranges. And so I fussy cut all of them out. I love the color combination. And as I'm spreading them out, I'm trying to keep in mind that I want to make sure I have some oranges, some limes, and some lemons in each of the areas. I'm not looking to create a pattern with them. I just want to make sure that I have them distributed in a way that it doesn't look like any one area doesn't have a particular color in it. And then once I had all of the fruit slices in place and I was happy with the way they looked, I began attaching them down. I always want to make sure I attach things down as soon as possible before I forget that they're not attached down and pick up the page and they all fall off, or I start adding things on top and then I like the placement of what I've added on top, but then I have to take those things off to attach the first layer. So I decided that I was going to just attach them down. I was happy with the way that they looked. And some of them were already kind of arranged for me. There's a piece of the top that's 4 slices attached together, and it just kind of fit really nicely in that place. So I'm going to continue embellishing. There were some flowers in the die cut pack, so I decided that I was going to add those on opposite corners. And for the title, I'm going to combine 2 of the die cut pieces. One says July and the other one is a ticket. It says Memories. And I like the way the word July just kind of fit in with the word Memories. So that's going to go between the 2 photos. I wanted the word Memories to stand out just a little bit more, so I decided to mat it on some yellow paper. I used one of the areas of this piece of pattern paper that was yellow. It was part of a lemon, and I thought that that worked out, kind of tied the 2 pieces together since there's yellow in the word July. So I usually add some dimensional elements to my layouts, but I thought that there was just so much going on in this one that it just wasn't really necessary. I put some adhesive on the back of the title, and then I decided that I would ink the edges with some Distress ink and fossilized amber. I think that inking the edge of these 2 pieces put together kind of helped them to join together as one. Now, I wasn't sure if I needed those flowers there, but I asked everyone in my family and they seemed to really like them. So I decided to go ahead and attach those down. Whenever I make a layout, I get a lot of advice from those around me. There are a lot of great embellishments in this kit, and so I started working with those. The first thing that I added was a dot. This says Summer Love on it, and I thought that the color went really well with the layout. And I couldn't find just the right spot for it for a while, so I do end up moving it around. Another embellishment that was in this kit was a pack of these transparent fruit slices, and I absolutely love them. I took out all of the grapefruit slices. There were 4 of them. I started off with the 2 large ones and put them on opposite ends of the cluster. There were also some leaves from that transparency pack, and I wanted to incorporate some of those. And I also put a lemon at the top left-hand corner, and I decided to remove that because I just didn't think that it was really super noticeable or adding a lot to the layout. And then I was thinking, I'm just going to go for it. I put 2 of the grapefruit slices down, and then I decided to put the other 2, and I liked the way that kind of balanced out that whole shape that I have there. So I tried a different lemon in the top left-hand corner, but that one doesn't make it onto the layout either. Sometimes I'm so in love with the embellishments that I want to put everything on the page. And you can see here, I did put a whole lot of stuff on this page, but I did have to edit a little bit. And I think that that lemon just looks a little out of place in the spot that I have it. It was very easy to attach the transparencies down. I put a little bit of adhesive on an area that wouldn't be seen. I got rid of that lemon. You can see that I kept trying. I really wanted to include that. And then we got this sheet of puffy stickers. Again, beautiful colors, fruit themed. But for this particular layout, I have lots of fruit on there. I do end up using 1 orange, but mainly I'm using these little dots, and the dots go perfectly with the colors on the layout. So I'm spreading them all around the outside border of my embellishments. And I think they add a nice little fun bit of color in those areas. After I add the dots down to the page, I wanted to add some photo corners. It's something that I just don't feel I can make a layout without including. So as I told you, I'm going to switch out that yellow mat for a green mat. When I do that, I'm going to change all of the photo corners to yellow. Right now, I'm putting yellow photo corners on the green mat, and I'm going to put green photo corners on the yellow mat, but that will all be changed. And that was something that I didn't do until I was almost ready to post the layout. I just looked at the layout one day and I thought, I think it'll look better if there's a green mat going around both photos. So sometimes I do things at the last moment. I didn't even get a chance to film it, but as I have said, you will see it in the final photos. I use fossilized amber and crushed olive to ink the edges. I also use the crushed olive around the outside edge of both of the mats. I believe that I also did that off camera. I usually like to add an embellishment to my photo corners. On this layout, I felt like I had so many different colors and a lot of elements, so I decided to use something very subtle. I just used some very, very tiny self-adhesive pearls, and I placed them on each of the photo corners. And then to jazz up the title, I put a little puffy orange next to the word July, and that's the last touch, and the layout is complete. Well, I cannot thank you enough for sticking with me to the end of this video. I'm really sorry about the filming problems. I had promised myself I was going to buy some new filming equipment, and I have to do that soon. I think that the Shimmerz July Color Kitz collection is a really beautiful one. If you like summer fruity themed layouts, I think you'll like it too. All the information's in the description box as always. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.